Welcome to the Short Funk Podcast. I'm Tom Barbalet, and today, an encounter with a rather interesting miniature painter. I'm hesitant to use people's actual names in these circumstances, but an individual who has had a dramatic impact on my life in a variety of subtle fashions is a fellow who I will refer to as Fred Reid. Fred Reid was in the UK military through the circumstances that occurred in the Balkans. And his role there was to, as he put it, count skulls. He then went to work for Games Workshop, which is a familiar theme in a very early Short Funk recording. And at Games Workshop, he rose to quite a senior level. I think for certain folk, and certainly folk who are good in positions of leadership anyway, the military probably conveys things that enables them to perfect their roles in leadership. And Fred Reid was certainly like this. But by the time I knew Fred Reid, he had left Games Workshop and he was working as an independent miniature painter. That is, someone who paints toy soldiers to a certain level of detail. I employed Fred Reid for probably about 3 years to paint about 800 toy soldiers that I acquired over this period of time. And I paid him at a relatively reasonable rate. I gave occasional bonuses. He went on holiday with his children. He did do other work through this period of time as well. But I gave him a constant flow of miniatures and painting tasks, which took up a good portion of his time and, enabled him to do what he needed to do. I don't think I paid him excessively. I think there were certainly periods where I'd outlined certain things that he had to work through those constraints, but we developed an interesting kind of communicative relationship. Fred moved to Florida just before I moved to the US. He now lives, I think, in the Georgia-Florida border area. The woman he married and he are very much still together. They go to local conventions associated with cosplay, and he's moved what had been originally very fine painting into creating large-scale costumes. He has a shake in his hand now, which is I've had through my life, which is why I employed Fred to start off with, and I don't think he paints miniatures anymore. An interesting anecdotal story through this period of time is that he assisted or tutored a fellow in painting miniatures who went on to win quite a large event with a number of participants, with the view that this individual had actually painted his own army. But because his painting style was so close to Fred Reid's painting style, and because Fred Reid is so well known in the community, it was put back that actually Fred Reid had painted the miniatures. And I always put to Fred, through the period of time that I corresponded with him, that it would be more interesting to actually take his knowledge and translate it into maybe DVDs or something like that others could kind of pick up this skill set. He had a substantial impact on another miniature painter friend of mine who's now a detective, or has been a detective in Reading for, I think, at least the past decade. A fellow by the name of Chris Blair, who I periodically communicate with on Facebook as well. But these were time-place things. After I left the UK, certainly through the period of time where I initially moved to Las Vegas, and I've narrated that in previous short funks, I wasn't going to be employing anyone to do anything through that period of time. But Fred and I remained in occasional correspondence, and certainly whenever he has a cosplay competition that requires online voting, I'm swift to put his stuff online. We had a degree of existential respect through correspondence. We had a degree of insight. We talked about a wide variety of things while we were also talking about the miniatures that were to be painted. I met him on one occasion. Games Workshop has an annual event called Games Day in Birmingham. I met him at Games Day 2004. And we had a respectful conversation. It was quite curious to actually be in the presence of this man who I had spent so long corresponding with. I was wearing a rather loud Hawaiian shirt, as was my style at the time. But, I periodically ping Fred. I periodically keep in contact with him. And certainly, for my time in the UK, he provided a great degree of insight associated with this company that I had some knowledge of. And have continued, actually, to maintain friendships with a wide variety of the folk involved. Tom Barbalet in San Jose, signing out.